Right now is the best time in history to be a TA leader. Because when the world sees uncertainty, future-ready leaders, they see the clearest opportunities that they've ever had. And my guest today has created an assessment to help TA leaders measure exactly how future-ready they are, and they can do it in under 5 minutes. In today's Fireside Chat, I am joined by Matt Alder, who is going to show us how the FIT assessment is giving TA leaders a roadmap for thriving in the era of AI. Join me in this episode of iCIMS Fire Chats. All right, Matt, welcome to our iCIMS Fireside Chat.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I love being on other people's shows and not having to ask the questions. It's fantastic.
It is, and it is. I don't know about you, but whenever I switch from one to the next, it's like, all right, I'm not asking the questions. I'm the guest. I need to answer the questions. So I actually have to kind of like do this whole mental prep of what's my role. But I have been a fan of yours, and actually, I got to come on to your podcast. We talked about AI back in 2020, right? So
we did,
back
yeah.
before,
back before
we thought that it would actually be here in the next 5 years, which is kind of funny. But today, I want to get into some really interesting research and kind of work that you've been doing. And I think this is going to be a very enlightening for our audience, kind of some of the stuff that you're going over. So now you have spent over 2 decades helping companies with the future of hiring. But what kind of pushed you to say, hey, we need a diagnostic tool?
Yeah, good question. It's the uniqueness of the time that we're living in. I think we've kind of in this sort of perfect storm of lots of different forces and their outcomes. So, there's obviously broader economic issues everywhere. As far as talent's concerned, there's demographic issues in terms of supply of talent, aging populations, all of those kind of things. And then we've kind of got technology, and where technology is now is just sort of supercharging everything. So it feels like a kind of a really significant time. I think one of the things that has been very challenging is just seeing TA leaders being laid off, TA teams not being part of the strategic conversation in their business, TA being seen as transactional. Not the case everywhere, but there's enough of that going on to say, do you know what? Talent acquisition really needs to kind of state its case and step up. And I think that with everything that's going on with AI, we've also got this unique opportunity to make recruiting so much better, to make it work for everyone. At the same time, there's the chance that handled badly, AI could make it worse. So it just feels like that now is the time for people to really think about how they plan the future, how they create a vision, and how they sort of really drive forward into that, that kind of much better vision of the future than we might end up with.
No, I like that. It is a pretty interesting time. I mean, TA has always been accustomed to change, but I don't think at the velocity that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, compounded with some of the economic woes that are going out there. But on this Fireside Chat, this series, we always like to talk about what problem are you trying to solve. So it sounds to me like you were trying to solve a problem for TA leaders. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that change is happening very fast. As a discipline, we are used to change. We're used to things going in cycles. Those cycles either don't exist or they're going so quickly it's impossible to spot them now. So it was kind of, what can I do to really help TA leaders, make sense of the situation now, but also feel empowered to kind of make plans for the future. I mean, I did a little bit of kind of research about a year ago, 18 months ago, and a very large proportion of TA leaders felt that they couldn't plan. They couldn't plan more than 6 months in advance because of the way that everything's changing. And it just felt to me that we needed to kind of think differently about how we shape the future and really helping, TA leaders with the kind of the knowledge and the self-awareness and the tools to do that was something that was much needed.
So it was really interesting when you and I were talking about the assessment. We'll kind of get into what you call it and kind of the pillars, but can you help everyone understand where did you get the baseline of this knowledge? Because I thought it was pretty interesting in your approach.
Yeah. So I've been running my podcast for 10 years. I've got about 780, 790 episodes, something like that. A lot anyway.
That's a lot of talking.
It is a lot of talking. Well, it's 300 hours of audio. And it equates to about 3 million words of transcript. And for a really long, and the podcast is quite strategic. People are talking about, things that are relevant, are still relevant, years after they say them sometimes. So it just felt to me that there was I interviewed so many fantastic TA leaders who are doing amazing things. And there was just so much knowledge locked up in that podcast. And I've always been very frustrated because it's very difficult to index podcasts and to really get that knowledge out. And obviously, the newer AI models have come along, and they've made it possible to do that. So I used AI to, index the podcast, to look for trends, to really kind of analyze what the most successful TA leaders were talking about, what they had in common, and just using the technology to kind of dig into that knowledge and look for patterns and see if we could find clues as to what makes, the world's most successful TA leaders as successful as they are. And that could be successful in terms of how they run their business or what they went on to do, becoming a CHRO or whatever, or just kind of being recognized in the industry, lots of different factors there. But that's where it came from. It was like using AI on the podcast back catalog to unlock that knowledge and really look for those patterns.
I love that. I agree with you. And as far as the capabilities of AI, it opens up so much. That 300 hours worth of data, that's quite a lot. So how did you decide what to measure and why?
So it took, it took a long time to get the indexing of it all right. But I got some specialist help to help me do that. And then when I kind of had access to the information, I was like, what is it that, all of these people have in common? So I just started kind of digging and looking, and using my own kind of recollections of the conversation. And, it really came across sort of 4 things that, everyone kind of had to a kind of a greater or lesser degree that seemed to, kind of really drive that success and to drive their ability to, deal with uncertain times and shape a vision and all of those kind of things. So it came down to sort of 4 key elements.
All right. What are the 4?
So the 4 are, the first one is foresight. Now, it might be a phrase that people have not really sort of come across before. In my podcast, because it's Recruiting Future and it's about the future, we try and sort of predict the future and second guess the future. I've done a lot of work around, well, what does that look like? Can you really predict the future, or is this just gossip and speculation? And there's actually an academic discipline called strategic foresight that works in that area in terms of scenario planning for the future, looking at, most likely outcomes, visioning, all this kind of stuff. And it's used in boardrooms and by C-suites of many organizations. And I thought it was something that, TA needed to think about and needed to really know about. So F is for foresight, and that's someone's ability to really kind of plan for and influence the future. And there's various sort of methods and things that people can do and ways of thinking that do that. So that was the first one. The second one, I felt was really important, and it comes across very clearly when I talk to lots of TA leaders on the podcast, which is influence, their ability to have influence within their organization, to get budget, to get resources, to influence strategy at the kind of the highest level. That's just, it's just a kind of a no-brainer in terms of what the most successful people are able to do. The third one is talent, because ultimately, this is talent acquisition. So there's an element of, I tried to kind of steer this assessment away from, what's out there already in terms of the mechanics of building recruitment operations and all that kind of stuff. But there is a lot of innovation that we're seeing around how people think about talent. So, everything from, skills-based hiring to, implementing AI to do things, even I think we're seeing it a lot in HR at the moment, chief people officers being put in charge of IT departments, silos falling everywhere. So there's a real sense that thinking differently about talent or strategically about talent is really important. And fundamentally, it's about what you're doing to make sure that your organization has the right talent at the right time. And that's not simple anymore. That's not just putting the right adverts in the right place. It's kind of really kind of thinking about it. We've got, shortening skill half-lives. We've got skill shortages. We've got things changing very quickly. So it's kind of a key sort of aspect to it. So, foresight, influence, talent, and then of course technology is a real key part of this, and really understanding how TA leaders approach technology, I think is just incredibly important. I mean, particularly at the moment where we are operating in such a confusing marketplace with, so many launches, so much commentary, so much going on, trends appearing left, right, and center. And it's kind of like, how do you navigate that and make sure that, your organization has got the technology that's going to power your vision rather than, a load of tech because someone said it was good or they were making the most noise or, whatever that might be.
All right. So we've got foresight, influence, talent, and tech. I got those right. All right. And you call it the fit assessment. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, are you fit for the future? I think that seems to kind of sum it up, sum it up quite well, just in terms of that's the question that it's asking people, as a TA leader, are you fit for the future? Do you have the right mindset, the right skills to really drive forward into this very, very dynamic situation we find ourselves in?
And, I took the assessment and I found it was really, really interesting. So, can you kind of walk through someone who takes the assessment? What are some of the result pages look like for them? Yeah,
sure. I think the thing to say about the assessment as well is it's been extensively road tested with lots of TA leaders. I kind of put it out there to see what people thought. I got lots of feedback, and I've kind of adjusted it over time. But really, what it does is it'll give you a score in each of those areas. So it's not a very long assessment. It's a few questions on each of those.
Long at all.
Yeah, on each of those pillars. So it'll give you a kind of a score against each of the pillars and an overall score. It will tell you whether you are, whether you're still sort of developing as a TA leader, whether you're established, or whether you're sort of, advanced. And I think you can then, get a sense of where you are along the curve of, of everyone else, or the most successful people in the industry. And, some of the questions are about how you think about things. Some of the questions are very specifically about, what you've done. So it may be that, sometimes people are getting a lower score just because they haven't had the chance to experience some of the things that are on there. And so I think it's that kind of balance of skills, mindset, and experience that kind of makes up that final score.
But the result page I really like, because I was thinking of as an HR exec, how many times I had TA leaders that came and said I needed to be developed, and it was kind of one way. I was inferring based off of what I saw, but I think it'd be awesome as a TA leader to take this and then be able to go to your direct report manager and say, here's my score. Here are the areas that I need a lot of work, and then developing a career journey plan based off of that. I love the fact that you really kind of hit the nail on the head, and that was definitely something that was needed. Did you, as you start looking at some of the data, was there anything that just really kind of surprised you about the actual results?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. The great thing about it from a really getting an insight in terms of what's going on in the industry is obviously the more people who take it, the kind of the more interesting the results become. So, but so far, what I suppose has surprised me and surprised some of the assumptions that perhaps I had, I think in terms of foresight, we're kind of pretty much where I thought we were as an industry. I think it's something that everyone needs to think about and work on. Influence, I was, I think influence is much further ahead than I thought it would be. I think people,
Really?
I was something that I suppose there's kind of like a narrative about TA not having a seat at the table or having influence,
Right.
but actually, certainly amongst the people who have taken the test, that score is higher than I would have thought. The real one is kind of technology, because I think across the board the technology scores are a lot lower than I thought they would be, and I wonder whether, because we live in such a kind of a technology driven environment, whether people are reticent about asking for help or reticent about identifying areas for development in technology, because it's just considered that everyone should know everything about technology. And
Right.
it's not the case, because AI is moving so fast at the moment. And I think that there is a real sense of not knowing what you don't know about AI. And it can be quite difficult to get the information from kind of a trusted source and all those sort of things. So I think it's the technology bit. And then I kind of reflect on it. I'm not as surprised as I kind of thought I was, because it is moving so quickly. And also I think it reflects on people's own organization. When it comes to AI, some organizations are kind of very open for experimenting, and there's still one of the questions on the survey is whether your organization lets you use AI at all. And there's still a good 20% of people from organizations who, AI is not something that their company is currently embracing or is actively kind of blocking. So I think it also kind of gives a sense of where we are with that.
It's fascinating. In our August monthly insights report, we actually, each month, we report on what's going on in the job market, but we also look at different subjects. So I think it was July, we looked at the graduating class of 2025 going into the job market. What was some data around it? This month in August, we actually looked at AI from two different angles. One, we got some research on organizationally, and to your point, how many of you are actually using AI, and where are you seeing the ROI or the efficiency? And then what are you doing with that efficiency? And the results were really, really interesting. And then we looked at it from a candidate. How familiar are you with AI in the process? Do you think it's going to speed up the process? And do you think it's fair? And I was surprised. I wasn't surprised by some of the results, but I was surprised by one in particular, and that's where in the process people really feel like TA organizations feel that the biggest lift is. I thought it would have been in sourcing and kind of top of the funnel, but it actually comes out to candidate screening and matching, which was very surprising for me. So, definitely some data out there in terms of some trends, but so I guess you probably had future ready definition prior to assessing the results. Has that definition of future ready organization changed as a result of some of this research and data feedback?
I think it's kind of been refined. It's been refined a little bit. I think that's probably the best way to view it. I think that there's a critical kind of factor that I think makes for a future ready TA leader, future ready TA team, and you can kind of see this coming across, and it's having that vision of where TA is going in their organization. And it's never been more important. It's not something that people can be passive about, because particularly, where AI is coming into organizations and is, automating things, is making things more efficient. It's creating capacity across organizations. And this is kind of where the debate is. It's like, are we going to lose jobs because of AI? If we create all this capacity, then we need less people. And I think that, TA needs an answer for that in terms of how they're going to monetize that capacity. And that doesn't necessarily have to be, we're going to have less people. It's like, our people are going to do things that will bring more value to our organization. And in the influence section, there's bits about how your TA strategy aligns with your organization strategy in terms of providing value. So I think it just kind of all ties into, having that vision and dealing with, some of these things that are coming up, that are either already here or coming up in a very, kind of positive and proactive way.
I love that. So if someone is interested in taking their own fit assessment, how do they do that?
Yeah, if you just go to mattalder.me/fit, and fit is FITT, then that'll take you straight to the, straight to the page. Takes about 5 minutes. It'll give you, hopefully some really enlightening results, and more and more some suggested next steps.
Awesome. And go ahead and do a shameless plug just for someone who is, I don't know why, but they're not listening to your podcast. Where can they find you and where can they connect with you?
Cool. So the podcast is Recruiting Future. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts just by searching for Recruiting Future. The website is recruitingfuture.com. And the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Very easy to find. Just have a look for Matt Alder.
Or go to any major industry conference and you will see Matt walking around with the microphone. we were laughing because I stood in line a couple of times, what was it, Transform over in Vegas, and we just were never able to do it because
I kept seeing you in the distance, and I was just like, I think I found you and you were on a microphone somewhere. So.
I was going to say one of us was being interviewed or interviewing. So Matt, it's always great talking to you. I always learn something new, and I am sure that the audience definitely walks away. And I want to challenge everyone, go and take the FIT assessment and determine, is your TA organization actually future ready? Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you very much.